It's taken me a lot of energy to try and muster up any enthusiasm to talk about a Grant Dawson main event against Bobby Green. This isn't me saying that I don't think Grant Dawson is not a good fighter. He is clearly a solid fighter. He is. I mean, okay, he's a American wrestler. That is what he is, straight up and down, American wrestler. That's all we really know about him, and it's the classic wrestler problem that you see, which is good takedowns, good takedown numbers, really low output. I think what makes Grant Dawson a more interesting proposition in terms of just like a casual look is that he has been undefeated in the UFC. Like, he's got, is it 8 or 9 fights now? How many fights is he up to? He's up to 9 fights. 8 wins, 1 draw. With some really late finishes, like some of the latest that you will see. There was the one against Leonardo Santos where he got hammer fists as he was getting heel hooked, or about to be heel hooked, and he got the finish at 4 minutes 59 of the third round. Rear naked choke on Jared Gordon, 4 minutes 11 into the third round. Rear naked choke on Mark Madsen, 2 minutes 5 seconds into the third round. So, he's got a finishing gas tank. Like, he can finish fights late on. My issue and somewhat theory is that he gets these late finishes not so much out of what he does, but what out of his opponents do, or have a lack of, which seems to be cardio. I think that also Grant Dawson has the problem of just not enough variety to his game. If I think about what he does really well, is the single leg takedown. Like, he sort of snatches the single leg and he'll work from there. Like, that is his most effective takedown. When he goes for like a double leg, or he gets in on the hips or whatever, and just like as a straight shot, it doesn't really work. It tends to be more of like a snatch single, run the pipe, then he turns it into a double, turns the corner, turns them round, and then sort of does the grapevining of the legs. He did that against Ismagulov, which hopefully I will be able to put a GIF of or a video of right now as I'm talking, so that I can demonstrate that to you. Hopefully copyright allowing. Hopefully also the video that you are seeing right now is Grant Dawson versus Mark Madsen. Go to the start of the fight, or if you maybe remember the start of the fight, Mark Madsen drops Grant Dawson, and Mark Madsen is a wrestler with bad striking, and he drops Grant Dawson with a double jab with a 2 behind it. Again, slightly worrying for Grant Dawson, not just for the fact he's facing Bobby Green, who is a more well-rounded striker than Grant Dawson, but more in like, how can you get dropped by Mark Madsen? But what that did then allow him for was that Mark Madsen then got on top of him, but Dawson out-wrestled him, out-grappled him, and got to the back and within 40 seconds, and that's where he spent the rest of the round, and to be honest, the rest of the fight, where he really did dominate Mark Madsen. I mean, I remember when Mark Madsen had his fight with Vince Pitchell, and it was like Mark Madsen saying, I'm going to take a run at the title, I'm really committed to this, I'm not going to do this one fight a year thing, I'm going to go for it. And he had a bit of a stinker, and it wasn't great. You're like, okay, fine, faces Grant Dawson, okay, maybe if he can get back past Dawson, maybe we can start considering him. Dawson out-wrestled him, low-kicked him a lot. I just took his wheels out. I mean, when you face a wrestler and you kick their legs away, it sort of removes their explosivity for the takedowns. So then they either have to go for takedowns off of like a body lock, clinch position, and then work their way down from there. Because if their sort of legs just don't have the power in it, they can't push and explode down into a takedown from there. Which now brings me to Grant Dawson's opponent, Bobby Green. What is the defining characteristic of Bobby Green performance? It's the low hands, isn't it? It's the baiting you in to throw at the head so that he can roll you and roll the shots, have you hit the shoulders, and then he'll pop you back in return. Bobby Green's not much of a finisher, although he did have that contentious one over Jared Gordon when he essentially headbutted him and then finished him from there. And then he finished Tony Ferguson in his last fight through a head and arm choke. Now, what Bobby Green's low hands allow for him is to have the down pushing for takedown defense. It will allow him to get underhooks, get to the underhooks quickly, because his hands will be a lot lower. He doesn't have to bring them down for the takedown defense. They're already there. And also then, because the movement is always the same, so let's say the jab comes out from the same angle. It'll always come at the same angle, but you don't necessarily know what the target's going to be. So, for example, you could throw it to the body, and then to the head, throw the straight behind it to the head, or vice versa. That's what I would do if I'm Bobby Green. I would recommend changing your targeting, working the body from there. Because also here's an issue I have with Grant Dawson, which is, I know I talked about his finishes late in fights. However, I have found him to be a bit sloppy in some of his more prominent fights, and particularly that draw with Ricky Glenn, where the first 2 rounds of that fight were clearly Grant Dawson's, and he got that through wrestling. And in the first round, he got a takedown. I think he only had 2 takedowns, both got both of them, and then he got 4 minutes 14 of control. Second round, 1 takedown for 6, then got 4 minutes 8 of control. He had to sort of chain them together, try and get the finish, or to get the takedown. And in the third round, he was 0 for 3 on takedowns, and they were all ended up being double legs, whereas in the first and second, it was single legs that got the takedown. And then Ricky Glenn had 4 minutes 27 of control, where he battered Grant Dawson with 23 significant strikes to 1. And in rounds 1 and 2, Dawson outstruck him 16 to 4 and 7 to 1. So again, he's in this dominant position where Ricky Glenn's not getting much out there, and yet Grant Dawson himself is not really putting much out there either. I mean, if we go off, that's significant strikes. If we go off total strikes, it's 39 to 9 for Dawson round 1, 30 to 13 round 2 for Dawson, and in round 3, 2 to Grant Dawson, 66 to Ricky Glenn, and that's why it was given as a 10-8, and then the draw from there. But Dawson looked so tired in that third round, and I just wonder if he is going to sort of like shoot out of a cannon against Bobby Green. Because here's the thing, if you think, right, I'm going to give myself the first round, I'm going to ease myself into it and get my takedowns from there, just wait, I'm not going to rush it. Okay, that's fine. Whilst you're doing that, Bobby Green will be scoring on you. And let's say you take him down, okay, get him into awkward positions. The thing is that Grant Dawson's shown no inclination to go for finishes or anything, right? Or to get really damaging shots. It's just not really been there. And if you think about Bobby Green, when he fought Islam Makhachev had sort of turned the corner. He turned from this sort of kind of conservative grappler with the ground and pound. But he sort of just totally went for Bobby Green in that fight. That is what Grant Dawson needs to do in this fight. He kind of needs to get Bobby Green out of there quickly, I would say. Probably round 2 at the latest. Because I think the further it goes on, I could see Dawson having some problems, particularly if Bobby Green starts kneeing him to the stomach as well. And as I said, throwing the jab at different targets, either the body or the head, and the straight from there as well. Because, I don't know, man, like that Ricky Glenn fight, it was a bit of an eye-opener of like, it wasn't that much output from Grant Dawson. It wasn't like he was like completely overly exerting himself. So there is a slight question mark I have there for Grant Dawson. Now, is it enough to make the fight interesting for me? No. Because one, is Grant Dawson, and 2 is Bobby Green. I don't think Grant Dawson will be a title contender. If you think Grant Dawson could beat Arman Tsarukyan, then, I think we probably see the world in a different way. Do you think he can beat these guys? Like, do you think he can go up there and beat Tsarukyan or Gamrot? I mean, I'm not the biggest Gamrot fan, but could he beat Gamrot? Could he beat Gaethje? Could he beat Oliveira? Could he beat Makhachev? Do you think he can beat those guys? If you do think that, and even if you don't, get in the comments and let me know what you think of Grant Dawson. Overall, if I'm going to give a prediction, I will say Grant Dawson by... I think he might be able to get a finish. I think he's going to sub Bobby Green in the second round. If he doesn't, I think it could be a very sloppy decision win and a bit of an eye-opening one, whereby the UFC might be a bit inclined to be like, let's just have him face some guys until he gets beaten, and then we can just sort of ignore him as a title contender. Think Gregor Gillespie, Although Gregor Gillespie did that himself even when he was winning by, not following it up with another fight for a year, which I don't think Grant Dawson is inclined to do. Anyway, you can contact us at holdonbrother69@gmail.com. Like, subscribe, spread the word, get in the comments. We'll get back to you in the comments or on the show as well. And yeah, let me know what you think of Grant Dawson versus Bobby Green.